tube feeding, the most important thing is that we stay in sternal position. So we want these front legs where they are so that we're basically, our head and the front of our body is upright. We're not laying on our side or anything like that. It's fine for the back legs to be like they are. We can sit up or we can lie down, either one, wherever we're comfortable, as long as this part stays upright. There's 3 parts to tube feeding really. One is aspiration, or checking to make sure we have good negative pressure on the tube itself. And then there's flushing, both before and after the meal. We flush with plain water. That clears the tube, makes sure the food doesn't stick in there or anything like that. And then there's the feeding itself. So we fitted this tube with a little port on the end, and I'm going to hold on right here and then spin this part out. So that's going to come out. The first step is we have to aspirate for negative pressure. So all the syringes you're going to be getting are what we call lure lock. You can see they screw on to what they need to screw onto. So I put that on and righty-tighty, I screw it to the right till it's fit into there. You're going to get in your little sternal position, sleepyhead. There we go. You see how it's moving back toward the closed position? That tells me there's negative pressure in the syringe. If it doesn't do that, if I pull it out and it stays out here, or if it pulls a lot of fluid or gunk out of here, that tells me there's something wrong. I stop because I want to check with a veterinarian. It may mean the tube has come out of the proper placement in the stomach or something like that. So it's kind of our test. As long as we have negative pressure, I know, then we're good. Hey, Sniffles. So once I've checked the tube and I've made sure I have negative pressure, I'm going to start with water. And for our water and for our feeding, the instructions may change over time, but for right now we've been doing 2.5 milliliters. So we do 2.5 milliliters of water, followed by 2.5 milliliters of food, followed by 2.5 milliliters of water. So I've just drawn up some of this warm water that I already have in here, and I'm going to screw that on. Now while I'm doing the water, my food is warming up. Tube feedings also handle best when they're timed. So everything has its own set time. Our first flush of water is going to be over 5 minutes. Our meal is going to be over 10 minutes. And then our next flush of water is going to be over 5 minutes. I always do set a timer and watch the timer because I find our perception of time is usually not very accurate. The reason this has to go slow, not only because we're so tiny, is because of the potential to upset the stomach and the gastrointestinal system. And so actually while we're tube feeding, we're going to be watching closely for signs of nausea. Things like lip licking are starting to kind of seem like we might vomit. When those things happen, if they happen, you have 2 choices. One is to just abort the feeding, stop at that point, and try again a little later, so you're breaking that meal into smaller parts. The other choice is to try to just slow down with the meal you're giving and see if the signs continue or go away. So I'm going to start my 5 minutes, and obviously 2.5 and 5 minutes. What I usually do will just be to push 1 line or 2 line and then wait a bit and then push a little more. Okay, so we're done with the first flush, so we're ready to move on to the food. You can, if you want to, just finger test just to make sure it's not too hot. Room temperature is fine. So again, I'm going to hold on to the white piece right here because I don't want that to disconnect from the tube itself. And then I'm going to unscrew to the left, and then I'm going to put my meal on. So now we've got our 2.5 milliliters of Clinicare. This we're going to do over 10 minutes, which is twice the time we did the water over, but that's because it's got nutrients in it. We're going to start a little clock, and just like with the water, we're just going to push it small amounts at a time. We're going to deliver this amount over the 10-minute period, and then we'll do our last flush and we'll be done. Alright, so we've pushed all our food in over the 10-minute time frame, and the last thing we have to do is flush the tube with water again. So just like the first time we flushed it, we're going to do our water over a 5-minute period. I've still got my cup with the warm stuff in it over here, so I would draw up 2.5 mils. Depending on how long my feeding is taken, this may have gotten cold, in which case I'll just refresh it. So we just want kind of, again, the room temperature or tepid water. I'm going to take off this syringe. You can see there's a little that might bubble or spill out, nothing to worry about. Put on my water syringe. Then we're just going to push this last 2.5 mils of water in over a 5-minute period. I hit the wrong button, Bijou. There we go. And then once that is done, all we have to do is take this syringe off, and we're going to put the little port back on. We'll screw that back on where it was initially, and then we're done.